Yeah, we'll get them now. Hello, everyone. How are you? Can I get the tech room to put up the slide for financial literacy, please? Thank you very much. Any order you'd like. Hi, people up there. There are people up there. Hey, are you guys MICA students? Where'd you come from? They're with you? Oh, you're B-noters. Got it. So this is our last session. I see we weaned out a little bit, but that's cool. I would love for you guys to come up front. I know you probably don't want to, but it would be great if you could. Yeah, everybody's just moving all at once. I see. My goodness. It's, you know. There's some stragglers coming in. That's good. Come on up front. Yeah, but these are people on the stage. You're not looking at the screen, really. So, everybody, we are at our last session for today. How did you feel about the first couple? Fabulous? Good? Good? Okay, wonderful. Look a little scared. There's so much information up here. They're just trying to figure out how we're going to get it all to you. So this is our final session for the second quarter of Amplify Baltimore on financial literacy, capability, security, and asset building. And this is a really critical, I think, part of the discussion that we need to have about the future of our city, because we have so many issues with regard to workforce and economic development and education that make financial literacy so much more imperative now than ever before. Not that there was ever a moment in history where we could afford not to be, but I think because of some of the things that we're seeing with regard to our national economy, we've got to be more responsible and more literate and learned about the value of a dollar and how our dollar is being used in our region. And I think we have some folks here who will be able to offer you some amazing insights with regard to that. So I'm going to start actually in an interesting direction, because our controller was going to join us today, but she sent someone from her department, Bob McCarty, who's actually the city auditor. And so I wanted to start with the leadership of our city to talk about how the controller handles affairs in the city of Baltimore in a manner that would give you an opportunity to understand that because our tax base is declining, that is a way that we need to consider how some of our city resources are not up to par. So if you could talk a little bit about the role of the budget and the controller's office, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. I just give a little background on the controller's office. The controller, Joan Pratt, is one of the 3 citywide elected officials besides the president of the city council and the mayor. She serves on the board of directors, the board of estimates, and also the board of finance. She has 3 departments under her: Department of Audits, which is what I work for, real estate, and communications. Real estate just basically is in charge of the acquisition and disposal of real estate, and also the city's the city portion of the docks that we manage. The audit department is responsible for federal, state, and charter mandated audits. We do the audit of the city of Baltimore itself. We do an audit of the Pratt Library, the 3 retirement systems. We do federal funding like the highway grants, Head Start, CARE, the aging grants, and we do them as part of the single audit, which is we audit all the federal financial assistance that the city receives. That's basically an overview of the controller's office. On the budget side, I just had to read a few notes for this. It's not really my department. We do an audit, but we don't really deal it directly. The city charter requires that the operating budget is always balanced. And to maintain a balanced budget, any differences between non-property tax revenues and total expenditures are made up by either adjusting the property tax rate or by enacting additional tax enhancements. A recent example of that is the beverage tax. The charter mandates that the Board of Estimates and the City Council hold meetings, public hearings on the budget, and the requirement is that the final budget must be approved before the start of the next fiscal year. There's ongoing review of the budget through the city's Department of Finance budget section, and they review expenditures and revenue projections on a monthly basis. The city has a budget stabilization reserve policy, which is in place to provide a budget defense to stabilize the budget that has been impacted by something as an uncorrectable shortfall in revenues or by emergency expenses. A good example of the emergency expenses were the 3 blizzards we had last fiscal year. The city's budget has been negatively impacted in recent years. One was caused by the decline in the housing market, which reduces property taxes, which is the city's main source of revenue. The second is the city's unemployment rate has been increasing, which reduces income tax collections. And lastly, a big factor is the state's budget crisis itself, which has reduced the state aid the cities received. And for the budget department, and it's anybody's guess actually, I guess, but these conditions will continue at least through the year 2012. And the city has continued to reduce expenses the last few years and will do so at least for the near future.
Got it.
That's basically it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to go to Robin McKinney next. She's the director of the Maryland Cash Campaign. And Robin, I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you do at the Maryland Cash Campaign and how you provide resources to a number of organizations that are charged with helping people with financial literacy, but also how Baltimore kind of fits into the rest of the Maryland region.
Great. I'm Robin McKinney. I'm the director of the Maryland Cash Campaign. CASH is an acronym. It stands for Creating Assets, Savings, and Hope. And we're a network of organizations across the state that are dedicated to promoting the financial security of working families. So right now we work in about 14 counties. Our role is not as a direct service provider. That's the role of our local partners. So we come together for 3 reasons. One, capacity building and training. So I want to make sure that every single practitioner out in our partners has all of the tools at their disposal to be able to work one-on-one with clients. So we do training, we do individual technical assistance, and we provide a lot of fundraising. We actually provide direct grants to a lot of our partners. The second thing that we do is we organize a program called the Maryland Cash Academy, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then we do research and advocacy work. So again, in Annapolis and at the federal level, we're looking at policies that help or hinder the financial security of working families. So over the last few years, we've worked on things like licensing paid tax preparers. If you can just think for a minute that they were not licensed and they were handling the most important financial document that you have each and every year. We're only the 3rd state in the nation to pass that law. And now, as a result of our law, the IRS is actually doing it. We've put in important protections around refund anticipation loans and payday loans. And we put in a bill that passed last year that's going to allow credit unions in the future to be able to offer what's called prize-linked savings. So using what motivates people, right, winning, as a way to help them to save. So they would be able to actually get a kind of raffle ticket for every $50 that they were able to save. So we really look at things in a comprehensive approach. And as we look around the state, again, we have partners in 14 counties right now. So that means, you know, in rural counties, in suburban, and in cities. And there's actually a lot more in common than you would think. I worked here in Baltimore City for 4 years providing these services on the ground, and the same challenges are here that are in rural areas. The real issue I see here in Baltimore City is there's just such a density of it. And there's a density of problems, but there's also a density of solutions. So here in Baltimore City, there's a fantastic local coalition called the Baltimore Cash Campaign that is dedicated to providing these services on the ground. They're going to be 10 years old this year, which is very exciting, and Althea is part of that as well as MeQ. And so to have these partners on the ground that can be part of the solution is really exciting, but it also means that we can coordinate these efforts in a better way. Because what we know is that right now, everyone wants to talk about something relating to finances. As soon as the economic recession hit, everyone wanted to know why and wanted to know how they could help. And so we see our role is trying to figure out, well, what makes a great financial education program? What makes sense to get people connected to? You know, what are the little kind of tweaks that we can make to current processes to make them easier? So one thing we found is that each year we serve about 20,000 people get their taxes done for free through our partners across the state. That's a lot of folks. And we were finding that we were having all these great financial education classes, but people weren't always coming to them. And one thing that we found is that sometimes people just have a question that they need answered now. They want to learn in the future, and they want to figure out how to plan, but they need to figure out, what's that crazy thing in their credit card statement now. So we launched a program called the Maryland Money Helpline in partnership with Consumer Credit Counseling Services, where anyone, regardless of income, so no income eligibility at all, can just call and get their question asked. And that's actually driven a lot of people into these other services because they are able to get what they need in this moment and move forward. It's called the Maryland Money Helpline. It's 877-254-1097. Having done way too much media about it. But the thing that we try to do, again, we could have 800 different phone numbers, is that we actually route everything through United Way's 211 number. So that way anyone anywhere in the state doesn't have to remember these 50 different numbers. They can get it all through United Way First Call for Help. And that goes for where all the free tax preparation locations are, where financial education classes are happening. So for example, through our program, the Maryland Cash Academy, people can go on our website. We just started it last year, and it's in Baltimore City and Montgomery County as a test. And so classes are there, and they're all vetted. Again, something that's very important, and something that we are seeing here in Baltimore. We have an incredible resource in our financial professionals, in our teachers, in people that work at a wide range of financial institutions that have this, and a lot of faith-based institutions that have this great information. We just need to connect them with the folks who need it and who want it. And so I think here, more than in other places, we actually have a lot more to pull on. In rural areas, you only have but so many people. We have headquarters for major financial service companies here. There's actually a lot more to pull on here. And so that's why it's wonderful that there's things like the Baltimore Cash Campaign and other coalitions that can help kind of organize this. So just kind of in one parting thought, and then you can ask me whatever questions you want. There are some things that there is a gap around. So for example, one big gap is around the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a federal tax credit that goes to low to moderate income families, and it's a reward for work. You can only get it if you're working, and the only way to get it is by filing your taxes. And it goes to folks who make less than $45,000 a year. It's a wonderful program. It lifts more families out of poverty than temporary cash assistance, than food stamps, than medical assistance, than any other federal program. It's about $30 billion a year at the federal level that goes back directly into low-income families. And what's great about that is that in the state, we also have a Maryland Earned Income Credit. We're one of a handful of states that have that, which is 25% of the federal. And for years, we've done these great outreach campaigns, all wonderful partners like these folks at the table. And what we know is that right now, in 2011, we are leaving $110 million on the table across the state. And in Baltimore City, it's $20 million. So think about, our average client makes $17,000. Imagine the impact of $20 million going back to all those folks who make less than $17,000 across the state. And that's where we need everyone to help get the word out. We have flyers, we have stuffers, we have a very humiliating television commercial that I star in. There's a lot of things that we can get, put in people's hands. We need employers, we need churches, we need schools, we need everybody to get the word out about this important program, because it's not often people who are filing their taxes, it's people who maybe only worked part of the year, and so they don't realize that this important benefit is out there for them. So I just encourage all of you to get connected. Feel free to go to our website and find out about what programs are happening in your local neighborhood and help get the word out.
All right, thank you. Althea, I'm going to come to you next because you're the program director for our Money Place Financial Services. It's a really unique combination between credit union and a check cashing establishment in a Baltimore neighborhood. And if you could talk a little bit about the methodology behind the combination of the two, but also how it really services the unique population in the area in which you reside.
Good afternoon. I'm Althea Saunders Rainier. I'm with Bon Secours and Our Money Place Financial Services. We're located in southwest Baltimore. As many of you may know, that's about 4 miles west of here. Our Money Place retail operation is located in the West Side Shopping Center over off Frederick Avenue. About 12 years ago, in 1997, the last bank left Southwest with no financial services, and in an effort to provide financial services, Bon Secours, working with the coalition Operation Reach Out Southwest, which is the community coalition in Southwest Baltimore, came together with Bon Secours to say, what can we do to get some viability back to this neighborhood? Because unfortunately, like many neighborhoods in Baltimore, it had been ravaged through a number of things such as drugs, and so the community had lost sight. With the coalition and the help of the FDIC, we did a study of the money in the community, because one thing banks want to know, and they're in the business of making money, is what kind of money is in the neighborhood. In order to help us understand what that looked like, we did the study. We found that 30% of it made 0 to 15, another 30% made 15 to 35,000, and then another 30% was above 35 to as much as 75,000. So we knew that there was income in this community, but how could we bring back a bank that would help individuals to become more in the mainstream banking system? So we went to work. We took our study around to many of the more commercial banks, but of course they thought it was wonderful and nice, but they weren't quite ready for it. In the end, the community as well also said, what we'd like to have is a check casher. What you have to understand that is in modern low-income neighborhoods, while individuals do want banks, banks don't stay if they find it very difficult to make any money. And oftentimes trying to put a product out in a modern low-income neighborhood takes a little more time than a more affluent neighborhood, and banks don't tend to stay around. So they said they wanted a check casher. The other reason they wanted a check casher was because check cashers also were more customer friendly. And as a result of this, we began to take away that traditional thinking for many of us who had come from communities where there were banks. We said, okay, let's look at a check casher. And while check cashers are not seen as formidable partners, when you live in these communities where it is presumed that you don't have any financial services you need, you still have the need to do financial business, and check cashers are the way you do it, because individuals still have rent to pay. And many of these landlords in these communities actually didn't take checks, so the check casher was the way in which they did their financial services. We went out and we saw it, and we came up with a check casher. Then we had a bank who wanted to increase their outreach, and it was actually a credit union, and somebody will talk to you about the difference between a bank and a credit union, but credit unions are more community friendly, and we paired with a check casher and a credit union. While individuals thought that this was really a strange mix, what we did understand was that many banks will tell you that their biggest success is near a check casher. And as information and as the banking industry has changed and how our money gets processed through the bank, many people find that there is a need to still use the check casher, especially as we have need for other services. So in March of 2003, we opened up what's called Our Money Place, which is located in the West Side Shopping Center. The interesting thing about this is that Our Money Place is actually named by that community coalition. They own the rights to that name. So we had partnership with the community, and when you have partnership in the community, it's not so difficult to then sell the idea to the community. We were able then to go in and help individuals open up bank accounts and again become back into mainstream banking and able to begin to access services. And while they still use the check cashing, here was an opportunity for them now to begin to think about, how can I get back into banking? We talked a lot about the unbanked. And the one correction I would like to make is that individuals aren't necessarily unbanked as much as they are fearful of banks and have banking issues. So individuals have been into the banking system, but they come back and they have banking issues. Working with the credit union allows individuals to still get savings accounts depending on what their previous banking issue may be, with the understanding that they can help them settle those matters and then move into maybe more other financial services such as a checking account. Because what we do understand that the responsibility to a checking account is very different than the responsibility to the savings account. And this has helped a number of people in our community. So we work at the very grassroots, helping individuals to get realigned back with banking services and helping them as well with their credit and their debt. All our work is on the ground right there in the community, and it's not only open to individuals who live in Southwest Baltimore, but any resident within Baltimore City. Currently, this tax season, we have served over 1,000 people, doing nearly 800 free taxes for individual, as Robin said. We're part of the Baltimore Cash Coalition, who has helped us to be able to offer this service to our residents in the community. So one thing that I'd like for you to take away from here today, and one of my beliefs is that in order for individuals to become viable, my question is, what are we, the residents of Baltimore, Southwest Baltimore, and the Baltimore communities, willing to do? Because there's a role we all have that we are responsible for. As Robin said, we offer many seminars. I do financial coaching and workshops around financial education, and oftentimes we find that these seats are still very empty. And as Robin stated, the density is more here in the city. And so we want you to know that the resource is out there, and to continue to encourage individuals that if they want to change where they are, that a part of it starts with them coming and taking part of the resources that we have to offer. At Bon Secours, we're located at 26 North Fulton Avenue. Over there, we're there 5 days a week with the ability to help people really change their financial life. And we want to help individuals be financially responsible so that they can pay the taxes, and so that we can have the schools and the roads that are necessary for building a better Baltimore. One of my sayings is that it's not really how much money you make, but how well you manage what you make. And so we come hoping that we can encourage individuals, and that individuals will find the need to be responsible and come to the services that are offered not only in Southwest Baltimore, but really all across the Maryland, so that we can have a different story. My concern is that as we look around the nation and look at the many cities, that we see what's going on in the various cities, and like Wisconsin, that we are now given a formidable platform in which to take our agenda to our government, city and state, so that we can have services and so that we can have a Baltimore that fits for the communities of Baltimore.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Bert Hash. He's the president and CEO of MECU, the Municipal Employees Credit Union. I wanted to ask you to explain the differences between a typical mainstream bank and a credit union, and also the ability of a credit union to kind of meet the unique needs of the community in which it resides, and more importantly, how you're amplifying Baltimore with a lot of the initiatives that you also support as an institution.
Okay. Thank you, and good evening. I'm Bert Hash, President and CEO of MECU of Baltimore. MECU is a 75-year-old financial institution. It's a credit union. The difference between a bank and a credit union, typically you see that a bank is a for-profit organization that's answerable to the stockholders who have invested in that institution, and they're looking for a return. While on the other hand, a credit union is a not-for-profit cooperative, and we have members, and we are answerable to our members as well. But what we try to do is return value to those members to use our financial products. In the state of Maryland, just quickly, there is almost 2 million members, and I say Maryland, but in the Maryland metropolitan area, there are 5 million people that are residing in there, and almost 2 million of them have some relationship with credit unions. So you can see that there is a large impact on the community in Maryland with the use of credit unions. We at MECU pride ourselves on being a part of the commitment of the community. We are committed to the community. Our culture is based on giving back to the community in which we receive our income or receive our living. And so we do a lot of outreach into the community. Now, we're not the only ones that do this. There are typically a number of financial institutions, including banks, that do outreach into the community. But we think that we have an opportunity to reach many more of our community members. For $5, you can become a member of MECU to enjoy all the financial products and access that we provide to help you improve your financial lives. And typically, we are able to look at the total community of members to be able to serve them. At MECU, we are considered a low-income designated community credit union, which means that we serve anyone that lives, worships, goes to school, or works in the city of Baltimore. So as you can see, the entire population of Baltimore can be a member of MECU. We have close to 100,000 members, about 98,000, and two-thirds of them are citizens of the city of Baltimore. So we do have a responsibility for reaching out to that community. And talking about some of the things that we do, and I said the culture commitment, and it comes from our board of directors, we are required as employees to serve the community. A part of our job description has the involvement that we do, what do we do in the community, and you have to perform a community activity. Of course, we give them the opportunity to do so during the working days, but a lot of activity is performed other than it's performed on their time. The one thing I like to point out is the dedication of our employees before I talk about some of the things that we do in the community. The Combined Charities campaign, or the Combined Charities, focuses on the city of Baltimore, and it's generally the government, or Baltimore city government. 96% of our employees participate in that program, and we're third only to the school system as well as the police department in the amount of money that we give back or that we contribute in that campaign. We only have 284 employees, so we're much smaller than most of those institutions. A couple things I would like to point out, and very quickly. We pride ourselves on our ability to reach out, but provide products that help the citizens of Baltimore to improve their financial lives. And one of the things that we have been doing for the past 14 years is a mortgage program. If you work, worship, live, or go to school in the city of Baltimore and as a member of MECU, we provide a 0.25% reduction on your mortgage interest rate, 0.25% below our market rate. And that's a significant subsidy so that we can help to increase the home ownership in the city of Baltimore. And we're very proud of that fact. We also work with Habitat for Humanities, certainly the one that I'm most familiar with in Sandtown. However, we also have worked with Chesapeake, and I think that someone was on the panel earlier from that program. We have provided over 100 mortgages, 100 homes in the communities that are generally considered the more distressed communities in the city of Baltimore. And so we are proud that we are doing that and being a part of that. But that is what we do. When it comes to looking at the support for the schools, we have 7 adopted schools. We have a college-bound foundation relationship where we provide scholarships for colleges. We are, and it's coming up very soon, the founding member of Money Power Day, and we're very proud of that as a founding member, but we're more proud of the fact that it's a coalition of nonprofits and for-profits, including banks, that participate and reach out to the community to help them with their financial literacy. And generally, we hope to receive, we hope to have about 1,400, 1,500 attendees. We've been doing that for the past 5 years, so that's something that we like to point out as well. Only a couple other things I would quickly say about what we do on a day-to-day basis as an opportunity to continue to help educate when we look at financial literacy, and we strongly believe in financial literacy because that's one life skill that we're not taught in school, and so we are very supportive of that. On an ongoing basis, we have what we refer to as budget preparation or credit repair, as well as a home ownership seminar that we put on in our offices on a monthly basis. However, we have employees that are skilled to go out and present that to any community, any nonprofit, any church organization, and we do so in a big way. As you can see, the activities that we've tried to provide to the citizens of Baltimore are activities that we think that can help improve their financial lives, and that's what we're all about at MECU.
Can you say something very briefly before I introduce Mr. Cofer and Devin Cook, the student teller, how the idea came up for you to put a branch in a high school?
Well, actually, I'll give credit. There's a credit union in Baltimore County. It's the First Financial Credit Union of Baltimore County. They have 3 student branches, but after they initially created their first student branch, we had an interest in reaching out to our schools and to provide an opportunity for them to have the same entity that would help in improving the financial literacy in the high schools. And we were fortunate to have a relationship with the National Academy Foundation. And so they were very receptive to the idea of creating a student branch. And I don't want to steal too much of their thunder because they do a great job, and they've been very critical, not critical, but been very, they have really carried the day for us when we look at what they've done and their commitment, because it does take a commitment from a school to make it be successful, and they've done a tremendous job, so I won't.
Great, thank you. So, Mr. Cofer, could you tell us a little bit about the program and how many people you're serving?
Good afternoon or good evening. I'm Mr. Cofer. I'm a teacher at National Academy Foundation High School. We have 5 academies there, and one of the academies that we have is finance, as well as hospitality and tourism, information technology, engineering, and law. Embedded in each of these academies are in living classrooms, in which we try to bridge the gap between what students learn inside the classroom with real-world applications. So when the partnership came about with our Academy of Finance and MECU, we decided to open up a full-service MECU branch, in which our students become fully trained tellers by MECU employees, by the MECU staff. They come over and train our students that get selected to be participants in this program, and how to become full-service tellers. And from that, they then work in a branch that we operate inside of the school, servicing the population of the high school. We've moved into a new neighborhood, so we're trying to expand in ways to still being safe to support the community as well. But as of now, we have 14 student tellers. We've opened up over 200 new accounts, and we often do financial literacy seminars. Often we work at the Money Power Day, teaching our student population about the differences between check cashing facilities, credit unions, and banks. We also help them with we focus on the things that pertain to high school students, such as budgeting concerns when they get their first job, how to budget for your first car, APR rates, unsecured versus secured loans, because when they start filling out their FAFSA forms. So these are the things that the student tellers go out to their classrooms and give different financial literacy seminars. It comes across much more impactful when they hear it from somebody that's their own age. So that's sort of what I do. And this is one of my student tellers, Devin. He'll expand on our project a lot more. I feel like it's best to hear it from a student.
Hello, my name is Devin Cook. I'm a senior at National Academy Foundation High School in the Academy of Finance. Financial literacy has impacted my life by being able to help my peers, along with my family members, to open up new accounts. I've been able to work in the MECU at the student branch MECU at our school, to be able to help out our peers to understand the saving and budgeting, the onus of that, of being able to better yourself and to actually I apologize, I'm really nervous.
It's okay, we're your friends.
And then also with a couple different projects that I've been introduced to, as far as scholarships, I've been able to understand the deficit and how one industry may impact another. It's a lot of things that the financial industry has to touch on, and that's what I've learned. I apologize.
It's fine, we'll come back to you with some questions.
We offer a really diverse curriculum. So in their Academy of Finance, the students take 8 different courses: managerial accounting, accounting 1 and 2, personal finance, and banking, credit, and finance. So with that banking, credit, and finance course, now they actually can come into the student branch and actually apply those things that they're learning inside that classroom to applicable population. Devin has been stellar in representing our branch in terms of going out to the different classrooms. He conducts, we use the MECU branch to tell the students the importance, especially with the financial collapse, with the importance of credit scores. And once you open a credit union account, now you have a positive piece of credit information that's being reported to the credit agency. And with MECU working with that low income, low SES or urban environment, now we have that. Now they have something positive. So now their credit score doesn't start typically as low as it should be. I know, like I tell my students all the time, if this program was in existence when I was in school, I probably would have been in a lot better shape when I graduated from school. I know commonly when I got to school, there was a lot of credit card, people lined up in front of the bookstore, not really informing you about the downfalls of, applying for multiple credit cards and managing credit cards responsibly. So on top of, owing, student loans, you also have the negative impact of if you didn't manage your credit cards correctly, and me growing up in an urban environment where that wasn't talked about frequently, me getting an American Express with a supposed no limit and, going crazy. These are some of the things that I'm able to now pass on to my students so that they can make better choices when they're going off to college.
Right. Jennifer, I'm going to come to you next because you have this book, 12 Ways to Put Money in Your Pocket Every Month Without a Part-Time Job. That might be worth a read, y'all. But one of the things I think we face is a real embarrassment and shame around a lack of knowledge with regard to financial literacy. And I know one of the things that you really focus on is sort of what's happening with this financial crisis and the gap between sort of the traditional way folks have been able to manage their money but not being able to deal with the buffer, the trauma that many folks are experiencing. There are folks on the bottom who've always experienced it, and so it's kind of like a way of life for them. We want to elevate them out of that, but we do also have new issues facing a population that have never really before kind of confronted not being able to kind of manage their finances in a certain way. So could you speak to that, and could you tell us some strategies that you've suggested to folks to manage that a little bit better?
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon. And I just want to give a shout out to Devin. You did a fabulous job. Thank you so much. It's not easy speaking in front of a group of people. And in my business, Creating Financial Literacy LLC, as a motivational speaker and a trainer, also providing workplace financial education, one of the things that we see is very common. It was just spoken to by the teacher and the student so appropriately. The teacher was never taught how to manage money as a student, but now he's teaching students how to manage money so that when they graduate from college, they won't have the same challenges that he had. And that's really part of the problem that we're having in this country, in that so many people, myself included, were not taught how to manage money or anything about financial education at home. My father dropped out of high school. My mother has a high school diploma. My father ended up getting a GED and joining the Philadelphia Police Force. But we never talked about how to manage money, balancing the checkbook, what does it mean? So now as adults, and especially in my generation where you grow up one way, but you really want your children to have all the things that you didn't have. So as parents, we don't have that word no in our vocabulary, whereas that's the only word we knew growing up. Money doesn't grow on trees, and no, you can't have it, okay? So you also have an image issue. So what we're seeing in the middle class, especially in this financial crisis, is that people are going to work and managing budgets that are 6 and 7 figures for their employers, and they're thoroughly embarrassed that they're behind in their mortgage. They're thoroughly embarrassed that they can't pay their light bill. And you have a tremendous number of nonprofits. I've been blessed to know Robin for many years, and she's been a blessing to me, and I've met many more people around the city. A lot of the nonprofits, their funding is for low and moderate income. The middle class and the former middle class are not eligible for their services, and if they are, they're not going to speak up because they're shamed, they're embarrassed. They have this image that they want to uphold. They don't want to give up the Mercedes or the Beamer or whatever that fancy car is because they want to look like they still are living like they were living. Given the foreclosure crisis is what it is. And I have a specific concern with the foreclosure crisis, so much so that I created a program that I'm trying to get funded. When you look at, it was discussed earlier about property taxes being one of the primary funding sources for local governments, including the city. Well, the foreclosure crisis is tremendously impacting those numbers. But I look at it differently. Yes, the family has lost their house right now, but the children have been completely displaced. They lost their security, which was their bedroom, their toys, their friends, their schools. As a child growing up, losing everything to foreclosure and not understanding it because, see, you know, mom and dad are not talking about it. When they become adults, do you think they're going to buy a house? So what is going to happen in the next generation to the city tax revenue when it comes to real estate. So I purposely created a program called Post Foreclosure Help that I'm having trouble getting funded because I'm for-profit. To help these families recover from foreclosure with a focus and an emphasis on the children, financial literacy needs to be taught in schools, but it needs to be taught at home. I encourage parents, as they learn from me, to teach their children. I encourage parents, those of you who have teenagers, let them start managing the household budget, if you have one, because you probably don't. That's just the statistics of the issue. Let them start managing their allowance. When they run out of money, let them run out of money. Let their lip poke out and trip over it. It's okay. Because as long as they're living in your house, you're providing them with food, clothing, and shelter. Let them run out of money in your house instead of when they're 26 and then they move back in your house because they won't move out. Okay? It's critically important. One of the things that I do is I focus on women between the ages of 30 and 55 in addition to the middle class, and that's because a lot of women have a lot more responsibilities than men. Men are wonderful, a lot of them doing the right thing, but we have so many more single parents out there now. Even when it's a married couple, somehow it's mom's taxi, running around doing different things. We have the sandwich generation now where I myself, my parents are 76 and 81, and trying to care for them and manage them 100 plus miles away. Even though my brother lives in the same city, it seems to fall to me on top of my responsibilities. So women have a lot more responsibilities in this economic downturn where the household incomes have declined. Women need more attention. I'm just going to put it that way. And when I look at the book, 12 Ways to Put Money in Your Pocket, I operate out of the KISS philosophy. Just take 12 everyday expenses and let me show you how to make money from them. When's the last time you made money on your cell phone bill? I had one person read Chapter 2 and create $97 per month with a 30-minute phone call to Verizon. It's just that simple. But we don't know what we don't know. And we have these busy lifestyles and complacency where I've had the same cell phone plan forever. Why would I look at another one? Because it might be cheaper. You want me to keep going?
I do, but no. We'll get more into that with Q&A. Thank you. I'm going to go to another poly person. I've had a lot of poly people on these panels today. Got 2 poly people on this one. James A. Merritt, who's the president of Live Large LLC, who has written a book for our young people called Spencer's First Dollar. I was so excited. He would send me an email. This is, Amplify Baltimore really working. We said, if you're brilliant, you know brilliant people, send me an email. This is your process. You get to define this conversation. And he shared with me this work that he's doing with regard to financial literacy with our youngest population. So I'm excited that he's a part of this panel today. Share your work with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is James Merritt, and I'm the author of Spencer's First Dollar. And the goal of my company is really to bring financial literacy to the youngest populations. My book is geared towards pre-K to 3rd grade students. Currently in Maryland, that age group is not affected by the financial curriculum that's going to be in place in the school systems. Also, I've just found that many parents, while they say that they teach their children about finances and teach them about money, the studies show and the research shows that the habits that they show children are just not conducive to long-term financial health. So currently our book is the official money book for Head Start of Central Pennsylvania. They found value in the book and actually built a curriculum around teaching the children and the parents the importance of the basics in the book, which is budgeting, saving, charity, education, and wants versus needs. That book right now we are in discussions nationwide to become a national tool for Head Starts around the country. But I wrote the book initially for my nephews. I wanted to have a tool for them. Like everybody on this panel mentioned, they grow up, they didn't necessarily hear it around the dinner table, what to do with money, what to do with so many things. So like other people, I got out of college and got a lot of money working and always found myself just not having enough. Where does my money go? I'm spending it, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I just had the realization after my father passed away that I don't have children, but I want the children in my life to just have a better example. So I decided that in my research and in my experiences, I learned that specifically in the black community, money is just a taboo subject. You know, it's just a subject that at the dinner table you don't hear. Either you might see parents arguing over bills or worrying about bills, but, you know, I had to get my first job before I really actually understood income and what is it and what do you do with it, what are you supposed to do with it. And as I talked to more people, I realized it wasn't just my house. It was a lot of homes people grew up and they never talked about money, ever. So I decided that I was going to break that cycle in my family and just make money the prominent issue with my nephews when it comes to birthdays, when it comes to gifts, when it comes to charity. It's going to be an everyday discussion for us as a family. And the value in that is immeasurable, not only in them understanding that how to spend money and using it as a tool, not a toy, that it can be beneficial to so many people, not only those in need, but your own family and your future, but also the understanding that with appreciation for money, there becomes an automatic stewardship. With that discussion, the stewardship becomes the most important issue, not spending it, but it's valuable, what should we do with it? And those are the topics I cover in my book. The next book is Spencer's First Bank Account, so it discusses what a child should do, introducing them to a bank for the first time. When you go to a bank, you're not just going with mom, but what happens when you go to a bank and you put money in, and how is interest important to you as a child? What does that mean to you? So those are very simple things that parents and children can discuss no matter how young. It's never too early, I'm realizing. People have told me, oh, that's too young for them to know. How can they understand that? Well, they're getting images from television. They're getting images from classmates. They're hearing things on the radio. Your children are learning about money one way or the other. Either you're teaching them or commercials are teaching them. And when commercials teach them, they teach them to spend it, period. They don't teach them how to earn it. They don't teach them. There are children now that never see cash. They don't even know what cash is. All they see is debit cards and credit cards and checks. They don't even understand the concept of cash. So if we don't teach our children that, consumers will teach them. And then the cycle will continue. And then you'll find children like me when I'm in my 20s having a lot of money, but still not having any wealth, not having any understanding of where your money goes. And until you have that important conversation, the wealth will never be distributed or improved, or children will never amass it. So that's the focus of Spencer's First Dollar.
Thank you. So have you guys heard of the B note? Have you seen a B note?
No.
This is a B note. You got Edgar Allan Poe and a raven on one. And I got to tell you, if I could spend $1 with Frederick Douglass on it, I'd be real happy to do so. And then there's an Oriole bird on the back. And I would pass it around, but I'm afraid I wouldn't get it back. But anyway, my friend Jeff Dickin, who actually I have to give credit for naming Amplify Baltimore. I had a little meltdown about the name, and we were going back and forth on Facebook. And he said, "What about the word amplify?" And I'm like, "I love that. You're great." Of course, he's a City College graduate, so that helps. But all of that is to say that he is starting a movement that I thought was really interesting and would be an amazing part of this particular conversation. So I wanted him to come today to talk about the B note.
All right, well, thank you, April. Thank you. This has been very enlightening. I'm glad to be sitting up here with all these wonderful panel members. So at its core, money is not what we think it is. Money is a belief system. And I hear a lot of good things on this panel about raising financial literacy, which is very important to have children grow up understanding that they need to budget and that they need to watch their money and not just let it go and not, and to care about where it goes. Just as importantly is who we support when we spend our money. Because we, the people, we are the ultimate value creators in this society. We create the value, not the corporations. And in the wake of this economic crisis, we're finding that, in large part, many of the large corporations that we've grown up watching their commercials and buying into their system and buying into their banking system and the structure of the distribution of goods, they failed us. They stopped taking into account real human needs. They stopped supporting our communities. And there is an enormous and growing movement to localize as many structures as we can out of necessity, because at this point, we created the system that exists now, and it got out of hand, and it's not coming back. And we can try to impose Glass-Steagall again and put the regulations back in place on the corporate banks, and to try to get corporations not to give multi-billion-dollar bonuses to their executives. But good luck with that. You know, we can try, and maybe we'll make some headway there. But there's another side to all this. And this does sort of change gears from the education aspect that's been talked about a lot today. And just as importantly as educating everybody on how to get along in the current system is that we need to build these systems again from the ground up. We did it once, and we're going to do it again. We will do it again out of necessity, because we need these systems to benefit people. We make a lot of assumptions about why the current system is the way it is. Or, well, that's just the way it is. You know, Bank of America, that's it. You know, it's been around forever, it'll always be around. Well, that's not true. We created Bank of America, and we create other financial situations, systems, that can benefit communities first and that can benefit people. So we're creating a paper currency called the B-Note. And the reason we're making it a paper currency first is that it's something that people can hold in their hand. It comes back to the basis of money. Why do we have money? Why do we have money? We have money to facilitate transactions. That's it. The purpose of money is to make commerce possible. It's not for accumulation. It's not for speculation. It's to get things done. It's to do the things that we need to do with each other as social beings in our communities so that we can live full lives and go out and dance and create art and laugh and hang out with our friends. It's not about sitting in a cubicle and paying interest to large corporate entities that we never see, and if you call them on the phone, they won't even talk to you until you go through 17 layers of, you know, phone bank system. So this local currency called the B-Note is part of, again, a movement of localization, localizing food production and distribution, localizing energy production and distribution, localizing currency. It's also called the Transition Towns Movement, if you have a chance to look it up. It's gaining steam. It's happening all over the country and all over the world as people realize, they wake up, they say, we need these systems to benefit us first. And there are a lot of benefits to having a local currency. It makes people think about who they're supporting with their money. And it was said on the panel that, you know, it's not what you make, it's how you manage it. And yes, that's a huge piece. You have to manage your money well. But in addition, it's who you're supporting when you spend your money. Do you want to spend it at a large corporate chain and have it go out to Delaware or Texas, be drawn out of your community, go to executive bonuses, go to the shareholders? Or do you want it to go to the local shop owner down the street that's your neighbor, maybe your friend, someone you know well? Local money circulates in the community much more than federal currency, and it benefits us first, and it does the things that communities need to do. And beyond that, it has many other benefits. It helps us think about building out local supply chains. When we talk about urban farming, which is having a huge renewal, it's all part of this system where we need local farms supplying local restaurants, we need local hardware stores, not Lowe's, supplying local farmers. And people start to think about, well, how do these supply chains form, and who can we get to fill in this missing link in the supply chain? And this is the longer-term vision for our currency. As the currency grows and spreads into all of the communities of Baltimore, we want to be in the communities supporting the build-out of these local supply chains, offering ultimately no-interest loans to business for expansion, to create jobs, local jobs, to entrepreneurs to start new businesses to fill in these local supply chains, so that everything that we can get locally, we can pay for in local currency and not have to rely on these big multinational systems that fly things in for thousands of miles, burning all this needless fossil fuel, which will be completely unsustainable in the future anyway. We need to start localizing these systems now before it becomes a crisis, before we find that we're relying on things we've flown in from other countries and other states that we just can't get anymore and can't pay for because oil is so expensive that they're completely out of our reach. So those are the long-term visions for the B-Note. And in the short term, it brings a social aspect back to business. The dollar is very impersonal. It This causes you to go into the stores you know, deal with the people you know. It brings fun back to money, and it brings community spirit and Baltimore pride back to money by having a local currency that we can say, this is for Baltimore, and this is to support us. And this is not to support the multinational corporations as much as, you know, they've led to economies of scale over the years. That's not what we need now. We need to pay a little bit extra and not look at low prices, because with low prices comes low wages. With low prices comes the externalization of all of the costs that went into that low price thing that we don't consider now. You get a low price, but what has that caused? It's caused the burning of all the fossil fuel. It's caused pollution in foreign countries that we put it over there. We don't look at it. It's caused the exploitation of labor in foreign countries as well, and maybe even right here in the United States, the labor that's working in these corporate chains and getting low wages and maybe not getting good health care. These are all real costs, and they factor into that $1.98 item that you might be able to get for $2.50 at the local store down the street. And paying that $2.50 really does feed that money back into the community very directly, and ends up having an amplifying effect on the economic sustainability of our communities and of our city as a whole. So we're very excited about what the B-Note can do. It's rolling out in April, April 16th, in about 5 weeks. We're going to be at EcoFest at Druid Hill Park, distributing the first B-Notes. We have a pre-exchange that's going to start up within just a couple days online at our website. It's baltimoregreencurrency.org. And we're going to have a pre-exchange where you can commit multiples of $20 for 22 B-Notes. There's a 10% discount on first exchange. Then they exchange just like $22 as you go around to all the places that accept them. And we've already got 40 businesses on board that are pledged to accept and circulate B-Notes when
Where are
they're
they located, the majority of them?
I beg your pardon?
Where are the majority of those businesses located?
So we focused, we looked across the city of Baltimore, and we tried to look at other local economic systems, local currencies, to see what is it that supports the strong adoption of a local currency. And we ended up focusing on the Hamden area for a number of reasons. And we're well aware of Hamden's history in Baltimore and the racial divide. But it really does provide an excellent test bed for the B-Note in that it has a lot of small independent businesses. It's geographically isolated, which is also a help. There's a lot of young, energetic people moving into Hamden. And it's also got a strong sense of community pride. And it's changing. It's changing very rapidly, actually. If you walk down the avenue, you know, it's becoming a little microcosm of Baltimore. It's getting there. And our ultimate plan is not to be sequestered to Hamden. I mean, even now we have businesses that are over in Hamilton, Lauraville. We've got Zeke's Coffee. We've got a couple in Mount Washington. We've got one in Fells Point. You know, this is a currency that's really for the entire city of Baltimore. It just happened that Hamden has a lot of the conditions for the strong adoption. Okay. And we want to get it strongly embedded into the economic infrastructure of Baltimore, and roll it out to all these other neighborhoods and let it do whatever it's going to do. We don't even know the possibilities that people are going to come up with for using it to help the citizens of Baltimore.
Thank you. Really interesting, right? Didn't know that, did you?
Thanks, April.
Are you ready to talk to us? Got any questions? Yes? No questions? Oh, there's a question. Oh, there's a poly man with a question. Wow. How did I not know? And he's wearing a poly hat.
Just for you, April.
Just for me.
Michael Scott, Equity Matters, Place Matters. I was fascinated by that, Jeff. And I want to throw it open to the whole panel. Have any of you all heard of time banking?
Say that again.
Time banking. So one of our Place Matters sites in Alameda does it. And so as we're talking about security and asset building and social cohesion, it's the notion of, you know, you give an hour of your time in exchange for an hour of time. And it's caught on all over the world, but really when you don't have jobs, right, it's a way of folks doing good for each other, but also beginning to build social cohesion. And so when you add in sort of infusing the time bank with your idea of green currency, you start to get, you know, you're capitalizing it, as it were. You start to get some really interesting takeaways. But yeah, I encourage you all to look into it, but something we'll consider.
You said time, what was this?
T-I-M-E, time banking.
Banking, okay,
yeah.
That was the second
And
one.
so Anthony can't get out the house. A young man gets groceries from the local organic farm. Anthony cooks for himself and another family. Someone else says, you know, this young man has great computer promise. I know a guy that will tutor him downtown. And every act is marked in times of an hour, and the bank keeps track of it. But it builds social cohesion. I just throw the concept out. We're looking at a couple applications trying to bring it here. It tried to take hold in Baltimore and failed a couple of times. I think there's one in Howard County, one on the Eastern Shore, but it has not yet taken hold in Baltimore yet.
And you said Alameda as in California?
Yeah, Alameda, California pulled it off. And they did it because they had a gang problem, and they were able to take young men before they got into gangs and really build social cohesion with older members of the community, and it worked beautifully.
Yeah, if I can just say one quick thing about time banking, it does allow value creation at the margin, and what I mean by that is it allows people who would not ordinarily get compensated for their labor to take part in the economic system, and it does end up creating value in that way, creating in essence jobs just for people doing the things that they do to help their communities, like carrying groceries, like doing elder care informally. And the weakness of time banks in and of itself, they're a great idea, is that they need a large enough and diverse enough population providing a diverse enough basket of services that everybody needs something else in the network and that it can continue. And yeah, I do submit that paired with a local currency, which allows transition from creating value from the work we do to being able to convert it to a hard currency and maybe take it into a local store and buy goods with it and then have it go back into the time banking system, it does provide another cushion and a way of making it sustainable.
We have a question here, April. Stand up and say your name.
Name and neighborhood?
Hi, my name is Nadia, and I'm 15, and I go to Woodlawn High. I might be the youngest person in here, but for the question for Mr. Moret, I myself, know a lot about banking in the Baltimore area.
So it's really just for the Baltimore area, but that does extend all the way out into the county and all of the farms that feed the city, since food is so central to our lives. It should proliferate all the way out into Towson, into Catonsville, into Dundalk. But, you know, you won't be able to spend it at corporate chains. So if you're thinking of going to Walmart, they probably will not take the B note, but they're glad to take your dollars and ship them out of state and not benefit your community. So it will make people think about going to little chains, even if they're in the county. Yeah.
So essentially what he's saying is that there are about 40 currently?
40 businesses so far.
40 businesses currently.
Actually 41 as of today,
41?
I've heard.
That will accept this. But what he's saying is that the goods and services that they provide will ultimately have a ripple effect in larger communities. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this going to cover the WIC program for the parents that are on WIC getting it for their kids? Because I'm starting to notice that the parents that receive WIC, unfortunately, these kids are not getting the nutrition that they need,
Right.
nor are the supermarkets being policed behind that WIC. So when they're coming up to the counter and they have Captain Crunch cereals and all these types of cereal for their children at the age of 1 on up, and it's not nutrition, you try to figure out why these kids today are so young with diabetes. The supermarkets aren't going to turn them down because they want that money.
Right.
So would this B note take the place of the WIC to make sure that they are getting the proper needs for their families?
Yeah, so in the larger sense, it's the flip side of getting away from corporate control is getting away from all of these products that we've been marketed all our lives, you know, the prefab breakfast cereals, and, you know, to get people to think about going to farmers markets for their produce, to get them to think about, you know, what are they eating and what do they need to eat to be healthy at the very core, at the very basis of their existence. Because you could do without Captain Crunch cereal for the rest of your life, and you'd be absolutely fine, and you'd probably be healthier. And what I can say in relation to WIC is that any financial structure can be ultimately integrated with the B note, and we are Right now, we're focusing on the paper currency. In the future, we do intend to implement a debit card system as a back end, and that can interface with time banks. It can interface with LET systems, local exchange trading systems, and possibly with other means of value, such as WIC. The Potomac dollar, which is in DC, Larry Chang, who runs that, is looking at integrating it with farmers markets so that people can get their food stamp money at farmers markets. And of course, that can only be spent on food, so he's had to issue a second class of Potomac dollars that are food dollars. And people can pick up these food dollars at the farmer's market, take them to any of the vendors, use them at the farmer's market, and it does, get them back to buying locally grown and fresh produce and becoming healthier.
I wanted to also point out in the program that for the next quarter of Amplify Baltimore, we're doing a session on access to food, local food, and urban farming, and we have the coordinator for WIC programs for the city who will be present.
And I just want to add that in Baltimore City, at least at Johns Hopkins WIC, the participants do have the option of getting farmers market coupons that are accepted at the various farmers markets in the city. They also get recipes and instructions on how to cook some of the vegetables that they get at the farmers market. What they were finding in the WIC offices is that they weren't using the coupons. So they were asking them to bring them back so they could give them to the families that were using them. But in addition to their WIC checks, all they have to do is ask for the farmers market coupons and just take them to all the different farmers markets around the city and just get vegetables for free. Over and above their WIC check, it did not decrease their WIC amount.
Okay. Yes, sir. Could you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Yes, I'm Alexander Rainier from Baltimore County. One of the things I think that we throw around to our children a lot, or they hear on the TV a lot, is about budget. I think that we should be able to explain to our kids what a budget is, simplified forms, how it works, and how much it's important to be able to budget your money in order to manage it.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, you can.
I think a lot of the panelists also mentioned that it has to go beyond just teaching, especially when it comes to young people. Really not anymore. More and more adults need to know, see patterning. They need to be able to see that this works. When I save my dollars, I'm able to cover my expenses. And we know that there is a certain population in our city that faces these challenges. And it's not just the extreme poor. Working class, middle class people are finding it hard to spread those dollars out. As James said, he is making a nice living, but there was a time when he found it difficult to take that paycheck and make it cover all of his expenses. And so I know in my household, my mother practiced what she preached. If she said that we did not have enough money to cover something, she didn't just go get it anyway and we'll figure out where we're going to take from or manage or juggle. She said we would go without until we could afford it, or we would buy something different. So especially when it comes to challenged populations, I think they have to see that these theories and these practices work. And I think there's also a need for institutions to think outside of the box, institutions like our banks and other institutions that we go to that our currency flows through our communities, for them to think outside of the bank and have, outside of the box and have a deeper relationship with their community other than to use services. There has to be some literacy taught within those institutions. There has to be relationships. And I think if banks and other institutions took that approach and built relationships in communities, we wouldn't have to have long conversations about why banks and institutions have left the inner city. Because they would have a relationship, and the people who work in there would have a relationship with that community. And unfortunately, that's not, that doesn't meet the bottom line for most of these institutions.
May I add to this conversation? One thing we've looked at, and we have workforce development at Bon Secours, and we look at individuals, and there's been studies around what's called behavioral economics as it relates to individuals and their money. And all of what you bring here today is really essential in how do we get into this quickly now rather than later. We're still having a lot of conversation, and it almost feels like we're losing some time just because of where we are today in terms of finance and getting folks ready to changing their behavior. We all know how difficult that is, and the more stressed a population is, the more difficult it is for them to change behaviors. And what we found is that with our work with the Casey Foundation, which has allowed us to watch people over a 3-year period, it typically takes these individuals that long before they even be, you see the aha moment, the light bulb go off when they finally get it, that, oh, okay, all that stuff I got out of the class, and for many of these, they've had 4 weeks of intense financial education, and as the panelists spoke to, that maybe people who feel like they're in the middle class, they lose out on some of this learning because they feel like because they have a paycheck, they're a little above. They don't come to the sessions. And meanwhile, individuals who are in the moderate and low income are getting a great deal of financial education, but it's beautiful when you watch this light bulb go off. But changing habit and behavior is very difficult, and it is a continual need to work on individuals changing that. And I think that Amplify, what we're doing here today is taking some of those first steps. But really, how do we get to those individuals who really need to hear this message?
And I just wanted
May I add?
to add, may I? To the gentleman who was talking about the budget, my colleagues and I, a lot of us have gotten away from the term budget because it just upsets people. And we started using the term spending plan because that's all a budget is. It's a plan for how you spend your money. And in my workshops, I start with things that people know how to plan. The birthday party, the retirement party, the vacation. Then I talk about, all the different aspects that go into planning those events. And then I say, well, you know what? Today is Saturday, and yesterday some of you got paid. Have you planned how you're going to spend that money? And tie it right back to the conversation that we were just having. And that aha moment happens because, well, wait a minute. It's, yes, that paycheck every other week sustains all of these other long-term planning things that you're doing. So if you take the time to plan that paycheck, you will have more money. And on my website, I have numerous free downloads, just tons and tons of freebies. I want people to have it. And for Althea, what you were saying, I reach out on the internet because the internet is anonymous. I give free seminars once a month online, and people can just show up totally anonymously and get that information because I know that my target audience is not going to sit in front of me because they don't want to be seen.
Well, let me back it up because I know we got to get to Dorothea, and I think Dion wants to come in. I think there's a lot of yes, yes, and amen in this, but we have to be really patient. I mean, Amplify Baltimore started in September, October. We came out blazing. This room is empty. I love y'all. But y'all know we could have more people in this room. It's going to happen in stages and on various levels. The kind of financial literacy that the folks we were focusing on in the economic development section that we talked about today, where people barely have a dime to pay their basic expenses, the kind of financial literacy they need is different from the kind of financial literacy folks who are struggling in the middle class need. We just need to target it. And then we also need to call folk out. We need to call the newspapers out. We need to call the radio stations out. We need to call churches and other community organizations out who spend a lot more time on things that really don't matter at the end of the day. But when you have these nuggets of things that could really empower people and amplify the way that they live their lives, these are the things that we aren't getting coverage on, and these are the things that they're not talking about. And so all of you up here have done an excellent job of explaining all the resources that we have. There could be 10 other organizations on this stage saying, these are the things we're doing, these are the things we're offering. But each of you has said, I've been on several occasions out in these communities, and I'll have 10 people in the audience, right? So part of it is about saying, look, I'm tired of being tired about this, right? We have the information. It has to be about the will of the people to get the information and apply it, right? And for you to be in communication with people and to call them out and say, look, I love you, but here's the deal. There's information. If you want to go to the mall, you go to the mall. If you want to go to a show, you go to a show. If you want to buy a pair of sneakers, you buy a pair of sneakers. But these are things that really affect you in your day-to-day living. So why is this not a priority for you unless it's a crisis, right? So what we're trying to do as a part of this whole conversation is to get people out of crisis mode, right? And is to say, like, we live in a community where there are these rich resources. You have the MECU president and his staff and, you know, all of these extensions of how they're doing their work coming out and committed to a community in a significant way, right? So that we get beyond thinking that there's like this one fell swoop way that we're going to deal with these issues, because it's really not. And that we have to be patient, because it's going to be a longer process than any of us are willing to ever say, okay, I'm going to commit to that in the long run. But you are, because every day you have to, because we live and that's what life is about, right? So we have these people who come up with these great ideas, the branch at the school, and you got what, 425 students at that school and 200 accounts? That's really significant, right? You have somebody who's like, let's talk about how we can create a currency that really gives something back to the community. Those things are significant. So I think when we get into conversations about amplifying, sometimes amplifying needs to be about, this is what is so. This is not so great about what is so, but this is really good about what is so, and let's amplify what's good. This is good. You all being in this room is amazingly good, right? So how do we get from beyond these conversations where it's like, okay, this is the limitation of it, and get to, here's the gold, and this is what we're running with. And I know Dorothea is going to speak to this.
Actually, I was going to ask a question. I'm Dorothea Stierhoff. I live in Baltimore City in the Cold Spring Newtown, and I work at MECU. But I wanted to ask Mr. Cook, because we're talking about how to educate people. And I wanted to find out, you know, grassroots, how have your friends learned best about managing money? Are they learning from their parents? Does it come best through the schools? And if it would help to have students learn from their parents, what can we do to help the parents?
One thing that I've been introduced to, well, one organization that I've been introduced to was the Save the Future program at Johns Hopkins, which helped me to distinguish my wants from my needs. And also my mother has introduced me to planning with my money, as far as I'm now paying on my own driving school and half of my cell phone bill. So, and then also, I feel as though some students react well to me going out to them and trying to get them to open up new accounts and different things. As far as MECU, when we had our Customer Appreciation Day, we gave out cookies. And that also helped people to come and open up new accounts.
I'd also like to say, for children as young as 4 years old, what's been working through my program is we have a pledge to be financially free. As anyone with children knows, children sort of manage upwards in a house. You know, what children learn in school and they becomes a habit for them, they often tell their parents, well, no, that's not what we do, or that's not what the teacher told me about that. So what we do is we teach children a pledge. They take a pledge to be financially free. And just like they might say a pledge of allegiance, they'll stand in class and they'll do this pledge. And along with the pledge comes a few things that they can start doing at home to start changing their value system of money, okay? What we recently did, well, about a month ago in Pennsylvania, is the Head Start brought in the parents and the children to take this pledge. And along with the pledge, they also said, gave them a survey and asked them to follow up with us on anything you learned from the pledge that you might need help with. So out of 500 or so parents and children that took the pledge, over 400 parents actually came back and asked for assistance in different areas. And some of the areas were how to manage money for food, how to manage utility money, general budgeting issues. Where can I go and get a bank account? Because many of them were unbanked. So you're talking about 80% almost of the parents who were taught by their children through this pledge that, hey, if my child can begin saving money in a cup at home and taking portions of any change that they find around the house cleaning and put it in their savings account, and then tell me, Mom, I saved 25 cents this week, the moms are saying, okay, my child is doing this and telling me that they're saving 25 cents. What can I do and where can I go and get resources to help me begin doing something positive financially? And the pledge meets people where they are. It's not telling everyone to go get a 401k or do all of these things. It just meets you where you are through a child. And then the parents, in turn, learn those lessons and begin to seek the advice through a place that is already there to provide them with services. So Head Start's not a bank, but they have people in place that can say, well, here's a place in your community to go and get a checking account or savings account or to get help with food, budgeting, et cetera. So those are some things that have worked for me.
Okay,
or for
I'm going to
us.
go to Dion, and I know, Mr. Cofer, you wanted to make a comment as well, and then we're going to wrap up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dion Waldron. I'm the program manager for Operation Hope, Banking on Our Future program. It's a financial literacy program. We go into the schools and we teach financial literacy from ages 9 through 18. And actually I have the pleasure of knowing some of the panelists. Mr. Merritt and I just met a couple weeks ago and he took the pledge. We have an initiative to reach 5 million kids in 5 years. And Mr. Merritt took that pledge to help us reach 5 million kids in the 5 years. It's great to see you again, James. But I just want to, no question really, but you know, just to know that Operation Hope can partner with all of you that's on the panel to reach our youth, to teach them financial literacy so that they can be better off than, you know, the stories that we've heard today with us as younger people not knowing how to budget our money or to allocate our spending. And Mr. Cook, at the end, you know, it's a pleasure to see him again. He's actually a really good speaker. He participated in our oratorical competition at Urban Financial Services Coalition at MECU in February, and he's a really good speaker, and it's great to see him on the panel. These young kids are our future, and we have to teach them well and teach them to be financially literate and to take us to that next level. So if I can, please partner with all of you to make sure that we reach our youth here in Baltimore. I've been hearing a lot of stories that Baltimore is just not on the same level as the other cities that we're in, and it's my goal to make sure that we get to that level. So great to see everyone on the panel.
Thank you, Dion. Mr. Cofer.
I just sort of wanted to piggyback on what Mr. Merritt was talking about with, you know, the budget and how we sort of create the accounts at MECU. I realized that we were having a big problem, you know, starting accounts. So one of the big things that I used with one of my classes was having them distinguish between their wants and needs. I realized a lot of high school kids, because their parents don't really want to tell them no, they don't know how much cash they put their hands on in a given week and how much spending they do. So one of the big first projects in the class is just, you know, spend, you know, do what you do, but I want to see a receipt for everything you do. And that's where we start the spending plan and the budget from. And once they start realizing how much money they're touching, then we start categorizing wants versus needs. And then as a bonus, as we were talking about prize money, you know, whoever can save the most money, you know, that we're triggering with the MECU account so we can track how much money they're saving, you know, they get a prize at the end of the semester. So, you know, that's a really powerful way to show kids, you know, how much, you know, their wants and needs. That's a really big conversation that people should have.
Mr. Hash. Very, very laser, please.
Well, I'd say this is more of a statement than a question, but when we speak about managing money or budgeting, we're talking about basically double entry bookkeeping where you can't spend more than you take in. And in modern times, one of the keys to killing a budget is credit. It allows you to spend more than you're taking in. And the children don't understand this as well as the grown-ups.
Oh, they do now? after this panel. That's what this is about.
And one more comment right here.
Thank you.
Your program that you have, is this only in a city?
Amplify Baltimore?
Mika.
MICU.
MICU.
Okay. Which one, the student bank?
Which
Yes.
program?
Okay.
Yes, the student bank. Is that only here in the city?
Yes, we only have the branch here in the city. But as I said, First Financial Credit Union in Baltimore County has 3 branches in the county.
Are they into the schools like here?
Yes, there are 3 student-run branches, and 2 of them are a part of their Academy of Finance programs. I think one of them is not.
Is it possible they may hit, or could they hit all the schools in the county and not just be just a few? Because if you're talking about children in their future, you have some that's going to learn this and some that isn't, and they're going to cross paths. Where do you go?
Well, you know, there is also, excuse me, I'm sorry, there's also a movement afoot to standardize financial literacy in the public school system. So I think that's another way of attacking it.
Well, actually, that was the comment that I want to make. Both Robin and I served on the Financial Literacy Task Force a couple of years ago, and the state has elected to provide financial literacy in education in the school system. There are about 6 or 7 jurisdictions that have that as a requirement for graduation. However, they are having it taught in the school system currently across the state of Maryland. And we see that as a big step in learning it. If you're not learning it at home, you should be able to learn that basic skill, life skill, in the school.
How early could they learn this? As early as 3rd grade on up?
That's what Spencer's
Some
first
of
dollar is
them-
about.
Well,
It's 3 to 5. It's grade bands 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. And all school systems by this upcoming September will have to certify how they're meeting those requirements.
Did you hear that?
Oh, that's how that's working.
I think they're going to be doing a campaign to roll it out so that you'll get more information on it, because it's kind of in that in-between stage, but it is something that has been adopted, correct?
In April, this young lady wanted to know if Amplify Baltimore plans to go to other cities and other jurisdictions, or Amplify plans to go to like Baltimore County or other places to talk about issues.
We've been asked to go to several cities across the country. I live currently in Baltimore County, so I would love to do Baltimore County, but I love Baltimore City. This is tough work to do because it's hard to get funding for programs where we're giving people this type of information. I believe that there's a collective will between entities and businesses and the citizens of Baltimore to keep it going, but it does cost money because it costs money to be in this place, and so we're more than happy to continue the work, but the people have to support this work in order to be done. I'm one person with a great bunch of people who support me, who write checks, who do free volunteering, and I'm going to talk about some of that, but it's tough work to do. And I got to tell you that we've got a really diverse coalition of people, and you see the diversity in the room, and I think that's something that's really important to this work, that you see folks from different walks of life in the room, but we've got to keep it going, and we've got to keep the momentum going after the first one, because, you know, the first one's always sexy, you know, and then people kind of like, you know, bear down. So what I talked about with regard to having a little bit more patience with it, it's a long process, but willing to work with anybody and to try to figure out how it works. So there are some really great people in Baltimore County that we could work with, and I'll talk with you about that some more. So I'm going to move into our acknowledgments and gratitude section, because I want you guys to have the opportunity to talk to some of the people on the panel. Was this beneficial? Yes? Good. So I want to thank all of our current panelists. And can you go to the second slide in the PowerPoint presentation, because it is really important to thank sponsors, because this doesn't happen without the people who write checks and give their time. Our event sponsors, Illuminous Consulting Group, one of my Civic Frame National Board members, Russell Clark, his company. Thank you so much. Conan Productions and the Supreme Dream Team. MICU, we've got to thank MICU. Can we clap for MICU's president? And Dorothea, thank you so much for this. You helped out with the whole day. The President's Roundtable, Live Large Productions, LLC. He will be selling this book later on, so you'll be able to do that. Mitigation Technologies, LLC, based out of Columbia. Peterson Moore, LLP, the Regional Manufacturing Institute of Maryland. Individual sponsors, W. Fontaine Bell, Eric Lee Bryant, Morgan Wheeler. In-kind sponsors, Corey A. Ramos and Associates, Glenwood Jackson Photography, Innovative Design Enterprises, Integrated Design Inc., Kelly Ray Consulting, the MTA, Go Your Way, Often, I love the bus, Nate Mook and the Localists, Park Heights Community Health Alliance, Positive Proofs Photography, Felicia and Felina Pride of the Backlist, who work with those wonderful people at the Wahlberg Project. I can't tell you how much goes into trying to pull this thing off, especially with limited resources, and there are individuals who are exemplary at helping with this, and I have to name them because there is power in naming the people who cover you and take care of you. All of our sponsors, our panelists, our ambassadors, the Civic Frame Board of Directors and Advisory Board, my mother, Yvonne Garrett, my stepdad, Johnny L. Wright, Yola Mae Madden, Alan Mark Spiro, Cornell West, Tavis Smiley, Benjamin Todd Jellis, Brian Jackson, Angela Frazier, Corey Ramus, Kelly Ray, Denise Doldrin, who is like amazing, along with Corey, who does anything and everything all day to keep this thing going, Russell Clark, Fred Lazarus, the president of this wonderful institution, Jake Oliver, Takia Hinton, African American Newspapers, LaFontaine Oliver and WEAA Radio, Maria Beckett, Brenda Goburn-Smith, Stanley Tucker, Jim Davenport, Dorothea Steerhoff, thank you, Dorothea, Morgan Wheeler, Dana Peterson-Moore, Eric Lee Bryant, Conan Ellerby, Lana Ray, Larry Young, Mark Steiner, Anthony McCarthy, who's just like the best kind of like facilitator, friend. Thank you so much, you're great. Always supportive. W. Fontaine Bell, Gregory Spates, Pat and Janine Turner, Eris Melissa Radas, Mike Galeazzo, David Troy, thank you very much. He's like our like mix master techie guy. I will never be as techie as Dave Troy. Joe Green, Wendy Emmerich, Kelly Martin, Kirk Sykes and the Carver Vocational Technical High School, Jonathan Matthew Hornbeck, Jerry Swan and Hampstead Hill Academy, Willie Flowers, Mark Fuller, another poly guy that I happen to adore, Amy Genevieve Kozak, who has been like staunch advocate from day one. Thank you so much. And she's going to be sharing information from her organization, Green America, correct, about financial literacy? Great, so we're going to get some information from her. Christine Boone, Sarita Oaks-Murray, Shawan Reed, Malcolm Grimes, Felicia and Felina Pride, the Wahlberg Project, Jennifer Matthews, who gave me lots of great advice on this panel. Thank you. Barney Wilson, Jan Hubald, and my GBC leadership class of 2011. And of course, all of you. This doesn't happen without you. I can't express, again, our gratitude for you hanging in. Many of you have been here the entire day, and that's amazing. But I can't also stress how important it is for this work to continue, that you go and tell the world what we're trying to do in Baltimore. The calls that I get and the emails that I get from other communities who are really interested in this project and really interested in what we're trying to do are really inspiring. There are communities across this country who are really eager to try to figure out how to talk to one another and to have this level of conversation. And I think we could really be showing the rest of the country a really amazing model. But we've got to show up, and we've got to make the commitment, and we've got to make calls to our friends and all of our colleagues and tell them to be in the room, because the work happens in the room. Now, this will go online in 48 hours, Ben? So this will go online, and so all of you that have signed up, I'll make sure it gets out. And we just thank you so much for supporting this work, and I'm sure that it will continue, and we'll see you next quarter. Thank you for always amplifying Baltimore. So you'll have some time to go in the lobby and talk with some of these folks. And like I said, they have information that they'll be distributing. And you'll enjoy the rest of the evening with them.